Tonight, a red-hot court case from this summer, the so-called Black Swan. Was it murder or was it self-defense?
David, I have the exclusive interview with the ballerina at the center of it all. Not on stage, but on trial for murder. An all-new 2020 begins right now.
I was living a nightmare at home. It was terrifying. It was like two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
You're 24, he's 54. Were you worried about her connecting with this guy who's so much older?
Things didn't start off well. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife.
I felt like Ashley was taking my dad away from me.
It was all a masquerade. I mean, can I straight up say that? Doug was not who he portrayed himself to be.
That was sort of like, what's going on?
So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. Doug never poisoned Ashley.
Is it possible that maybe you just imagined this?
Maybe it was all in my head.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life. I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
I've never been so scared in my life.
Growing up, Ashley Benefield wanted nothing more than to become a world-class ballerina. She never dreamed that one day she'd be wearing a court-ordered ankle bracelet along with her pointe shoes.
Man County 911, what is the emergency?
Okay, it's right next door to me. She came in, she was quite hysterical. She said that he attacked her and she shot him.
Where is the gun?
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor. Where in the house is he?
Deputies are moving as fast as they can.
A normally quiet Lakewood Ranch neighborhood turned into a bloody crime scene.
Was it murder or self-defense?
It's a story with a lot of twists and turns.
The 32-year-old former ballerina alleging he attacked her in her home and that she fired back multiple times in self-defense.
Miss Benefield was in great fear of immediate and severe bodily harm.
A woman out on bond, still awaiting her fate.
So many law enforcement officials said, no, this isn't adding up.
Former ballerina at the center of the so-called Black Swan murder trial.
Only two people know exactly what happened. One of them is a suspect for second-degree murder. The other is dead.
Until now, Ashley has remained silent about the night of the shooting, about what happened in that house in this Florida community. But tonight, in her first interview, Ashley Benefield tells her story.
Hey
there. Your first time doing this, so here we go. Let's go back to your life in the beginning. You wanted to be a ballet dancer?
Yeah, actually, I started when I was 8. A family member was dancing on Broadway, and I was very inspired by her and what she was doing.
And what was it about ballet that captivated you?
It's complex. It's something that is beautiful and powerful, but at the same time, there's a lot of control and you have to be reserved. I think it's just the kind of dynamic of all of the things combined.
Ashley grew up in Maryland as an only child. Her mom, Alicia Byers, says they had a special bond. Your marriage dissolved, you split up with her father, and you raised her as a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for the two of you?
At first it was an adjustment, but you know, we did well. We're very close. She was blessed with a lot of talents. And so it was a real joy raising her.
And at some point she becomes smitten with ballet.
Very, yes. She got to the point where she did it 7 days a week.
I was training during the day, all day. It was an everyday, all day thing.
She soon learns that it takes more than ability alone to make it as a professional dancer. Ashley's 5'9" and considered by most ballet companies to be too tall. something no amount of training can overcome.
There are height ranges in companies. A lot of that is because of partnering and complications that can arise if you're not well matched height-wise.
The ballet world tends to be kind of cookie cutter. It was hard finding a good fit for a company.
With her height and then a hamstring injury holding her back, Ashley decides to hang up her pointe shoes in her early 20s. You begin to shift your focus a little bit. In 2016, you became captivated by politics. What led you to the Trump campaign?
Well, I'd actually always been interested in politics. I wasn't looking for it. The opportunity came up, and I was just finishing up with one chapter of my life, and it seemed like the right thing to do, so I jumped in.
Ashley's job for the Trump campaign was to go to rallies, and she would rile up the crowd, pray with the crowd. You could actually see videos of her online. She thought she was going to be part of the Trump team.
In her diary entries from this time, Ashley says she felt a special bond with candidate Trump. She writes, "We got to the plane early and waited for Mr. Trump to arrive." Ashley writes about her hopes for her future. She writes kind of a plea to God. "I want to be a wife and mother. Please bring me to that special man you've chosen for me."
Ashley wanted children. She wanted a family. She prayed that God would bring her a man to be with her. She made it clear in the diary what her plan was.
In August of 2016, in the thick of the campaign, her prayers seemed to be answered while attending a fundraiser at Dr. Ben Carson's home in Palm Beach, Florida. At some point, you meet a man named Doug Benefield.
Yes.
What did you think of him?
He was charming. Very funny, really smart, confident, but quiet. We were there for political reasons, but then also he was a man of faith, shared similar interests.
Those common interests included politics, God, and guns.
First night that Doug and Ashley met, Ashley had a gun in her bra. Doug, who has a military background, he thought, wow, look at this girl. Like, she's strong and she's powerful and she's, not afraid of weapons, and everything about her was just great.
He nicknamed you Ashley Oakley.
Yeah, we both had very strong opinions about the Second Amendment. That was something we bonded over. I had a concealed carry permit. You wanted to be a responsible gun owner. We talked the whole night. When the evening was over and everyone was leaving, we were texting and up till 3 o'clock in the morning. It just seemed like I had met my soulmate. We were like the perfect match. He kind of swept me off my feet. It was like a whirlwind. I think it was about 4 days in when he first told me he loved me.
4 days? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was quick.
Something else Ashley says didn't bother her was the couple's significant age difference. You're 24, he's 54.
Yeah.
You're a young woman. Suddenly you're being romanced by this 54-year-old man. Did anybody in your life say, slow down, Ashley?
No, it just kind of happened.
But the bliss wouldn't last. Ashley learns that the man she's falling for has been married before.
Nothing was adding up. The more I tried to figure things out, the more the story changed.
And she says she begins uncovering secrets, leading her to wonder just who Doug Benefield really is. In the summer of 2016, 24-year-old Ashley Benefield is on the road stumping for Donald Trump when she finds romance at a Palm Beach fundraiser. Did sparks begin to fly between you two?
It was like an instant connection, yeah. We both had that evangelical background, so we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Doug Benefield grew up in a Baptist family, the middle of 3 sons, with a stay-at-home mom and a father who worked as a scientist at NASA.
Doug graduated from high school in Huntsville, Alabama. He was a top wrestler in the state. He decided to follow his father and our family to Texas A&M.
After graduating from college, Doug joins the U.S. Navy in Pensacola. He rises through the ranks quickly, and the Navy assigns Doug to a position in Charleston, South Carolina.
While he's working for the Defense Intelligence Agency, he gets involved in renovations of old historic buildings with people that he meets in Charleston.
Doug started up some businesses here, a restaurant, some other things. He had a group of friends and colleagues.
He loved it there. And one of those locations that he most loved was out on Sullivan's Island. Doug found a small hole-in-the-wall Irish pub called Dunlevy's Pub. That same Irish pub is where he meets his wife, Renee.
If someone were to ask me to sum up Renee in a few sentences, it'd be very difficult. She's stunningly beautiful but doesn't know it, and loves to make people laugh.
Doug has a pretty quick courtship with a woman named Renee Kauser. They marry, and in 2001, their daughter Eva is born.
My mom was the sweetest, happiest woman you would ever meet. She was an angel walking on earth. She was never, ever, ever in a bad mood. She loved everybody.
Doug's marriage to Renee, by all accounts, was a happy marriage. Of course, ups and downs, but generally a happy marriage.
Doug and Renee and Eva together are just this triad. They're just three together all the time. You never saw them apart. Happy, beautiful family.
But when Eva is just 14, the happy family suffers a devastating loss.
I was waiting in the pickup line outside of my school, and she wasn't there. And I went home, and nobody was answering the doorbell, and I didn't have my key, and my mom wasn't answering her texts.
Eva called and said, I can't get a hold of my mom, and Dad's in Dallas. And so I get on the phone with Doug.
Doug asks Melody for help. Her husband goes next door and breaks into the house to find Renee unresponsive, face down on her bed.
I just remember going back out on the porch and seeing my neighbor's face, and he shook his head, and I knew that she just wasn't there anymore. She passed of an underlying heart condition. It was shocking.
An autopsy reveals that Renee died of natural causes.
He tried to stay really strong for me, and I never really saw him break down from it. It was different, it was quiet in the house, it was just different.
Then just 9 short months after her mother's passing, Eva meets a new woman in her father's life, Ashley Benefield.
I heard about her on a Friday. I met her the following Saturday, and then Sunday, I was up in my room, and my dad came upstairs, and he said, Eva, we need to have a conversation, all three of us. And I said, no, I think the only thing that I would be interested in hearing is if you told me that you proposed to her. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he said, we're married. Yeah, it was a lot.
Eva's not the only one blindsided by the quick marriage, which happened at a secret ceremony just 13 days after Doug and Ashley met.
First time I hear anything about Ashley is they're married and she's already moved in to Doug's home in Mount Pleasant.
How did he propose? Was this a formal get on his knee and propose to you? How did that happen?
It was more of like, hey, we should just do this. Like, let's get married. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
They move very quickly, and before you know it, they're engaged and married.
Yeah, it was like, whoa.
What was your wedding like?
It was small. It was just me and Doug and 2 of his friends.
So suddenly you're Mrs. Benefield.
Yep.
Were you happy?
I was thrilled. Yeah, I felt like I had finally met my soulmate. I think a lot of it had to do with Eva. He really sold me on the fact that she needed a mommy person to be there. And I guess I felt needed and wanted.
But Eva, still grieving the loss of her mom, says she neither wanted nor needed a stepmom, especially one so close to her in age.
The age difference between me and Ashley is 8 years. Anytime I hung out with her and we were shopping downtown, we would get mistaken as sisters.
How did you get along with Eva?
I think things didn't start off well because she didn't really find out until after we were married. It was like, oh yeah, Eva, this is my new wife. And it didn't go over well.
I will just say this, he messed up. He messed up by jumping in to a relationship and not inviting his daughter into it. That was, I think, a huge mistake.
My dad seemed very excited and happy, and I also understood that he was grieving differently than me.
Ashley and Doug are moving full steam ahead. They don't just want a romantic partnership, they want to be business partners.
It seemed like we found something, once again, that we were both equally passionate about, so we just hit the ground running.
But what Ashley and Doug don't realize is that both the romance and the business will soon self-destruct.
You can't make promises and not live up to them.
Like, what's going on? People were mad.
I found out that it was all a masquerade.
My name is Sarah Muraski. When I was a young girl, I saw a performance of The Nutcracker, and I fell in love with it right away. I knew right in that moment that's what I wanted to do with my life.
After years of sacrifice and dedication, Sarah finally gets her big break. She's cast in the Pennsylvania Ballet's production of The Nutcracker, in the lead role, the Sugar Plum Fairy.
It was like it was a fairy tale in a way. In that moment of my life, it was everything I could have dreamed up.
But Sarah says one night backstage, her dream is unexpectedly shattered. She's told that the company is going in another direction.
The director took me aside and said, "You're too tall." For me to even think that it was done was unimaginable after sacrificing my whole life for this moment, for this career. It was a few months after that that I received a message online from Ashley Benefield.
Ashley says she and Doug were talking one night when they had the idea to start a ballet company that would include all kinds of dancers.
I was a tall dancer. I'm just a tall person, I guess. I just been talking about how there were things in the ballet world that I didn't think were right, and that, well, you know, if it was up to me, I would do it differently. And he was like, well, why don't we do it?
Ashley called me. We spoke. I remember her saying things like, I want to make a change for ballet. I want ballet to be able to show its beauty in the best way with all different kinds of dancers.
The concept was diversity. I trained with beautiful dancers of all shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, you name it, and I watched them have a hard time getting a job. I was frustrated by that.
You came up with the name for it, American National Ballet.
Yep.
So he was going to handle the business part, and you would be more creative.
Yep. Doug had done a lot of fundraising for different companies, for a lot of these kind of up-and-coming tech companies. And I remember him being like, oh, tech companies and ballet, I'm sure we can, fundraise for both.
Doug sat down with me and directly asked me, I want you to work with Ashley. You know what you're doing to help get the basics of the company started.
He said they were doing a ballet company, and I'd come home from school and Ashley was in the dining room with headshots laid out, sticky notes everywhere.
When I was originally brought in, Ashley had already hired, there were 50 dancers in the company, which surprised me because when you're first starting out, that's an awful lot of money that's going out, and you don't have any money coming in yet.
That was sort of like, what's going on? It just seemed like a lot for a company that was starting out, and that maybe they were biting off more than they could chew.
Even though he doesn't have the backing yet, Doug is convinced that he can raise the money. So dozens of dancers from all over the world flocked to American National Ballet with the promise of year-long contracts, state-of-the-art studio facilities, even a housing stipend for apartments in the heart of Charleston.
The idea was remarkable. The execution was a little less.
It became somewhat apparent fairly quickly that Doug was overpromising and not going to be able to deliver on all of this.
In the fall of 2017, the dancers began arriving, only to find that the promised housing stipend isn't available, and the original rehearsal space promised doesn't exist.
And then I think in like mid-October, word started to get out that the dancers weren't quite getting paid in a traditional way, that they were being paid in cash.
Doug was then pulling money from every source that he could of his own, money that he didn't have, to try to just fund this ballet.
It just got worse and worse each day. I didn't know where the company was going.
Adding to the chaos, Ashley is nowhere to be found. Not at rehearsals, not working with the dancers. She seems to have just vanished. And meantime, Doug is so financially strapped that American National Ballet ends up laying off nearly half of the recently hired dancers.
It's all fine and well to conceive of an amazing, ambitious dance company. It's great, but if you can't deliver it, somebody's going to get hurt. And the dancers, certainly in this case, are the ones who got hurt the most.
The very next day, after half the company's dancers are let go, Ashley suddenly reappears. Not in person, but in a post on social media, writing in part, "I publicly disavow my support for American National Ballet," and adding, "I'm no longer associated with this organization in any way."
I was horrified. I didn't know all of the things that were falling apart behind the scenes. I didn't see it coming. I no longer wanted to be part of it.
Ashley left the scene, and then Doug abandoned the scene. He's like, one day he just wasn't there anymore. The organization evaporated.
People were mad. People were very angry. Because losing your job in ballet is not like, okay, I'm gonna go on Indeed and see what's, who's hiring. You're kind of locked out for the year until the next audition season.
American National Ballet has hurt everyone. You can't make promises and not live up to them, because there are people's livelihoods that are involved. There are people's dreams that are involved.
Some fault Doug for mismanaging the ballet, and others blame Ashley for disappearing.
Ashley's absence from the ballet company was a very significant basis for the failure. She was the face of this company. When she left, the dancers, they didn't have anything.
But Ashley says there's a reason she left Charleston and the ballet behind. She claims she had to, that her very life depended on it.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around. I was living a nightmare. It was terrifying. It was like two different people, and I never knew which Doug I was gonna get.
In less than a year, Doug and Ashley Benefield's American National Ballet goes bust. What very few people knew, though, was that behind the scenes, the same was happening to the couple's marriage.
Doug always explained to me that the biggest factor of growing tensions at home was the conflict between Ashley and Eva.
I felt like Ashley would try and act like my mom and tell me what to do. And I was like, you were less than 10 years older than me.
Ashley says while American National Ballet is getting up and running, Doug and her arguments over Eva and the ballet become more frequent, aggressive, even scary.
He would yell and scream and cuss. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Things would be happy and okay one moment, and then the next minute he was out of control.
I never really saw a shift in their relationship, but that's also because I was trying to stay out of it as much as possible. I said, okay, if my dad's happy, I'm happy.
On June 15, 2017, Eva is out of the house when a heated argument between Doug and Ashley quickly escalates.
He pulled the gun out and started waving it around. He threw the gun at me. He said that if I left, that he was going to kill himself. I begged him not to. And then he pulled the trigger. And the bullet went into the ceiling.
At a legal hearing the couple will later attend, you can hear Doug's own voice as he describes this incident. While he doesn't deny the argument or firing his 9mm, he disputes Ashley's characterization of the fight.
You did discharge the gun into the ceiling, correct?
Yeah, I did. It was a horrible decision.
She says, he then threw the gun at me. That didn't happen, did it?
No, I did not throw the gun at her. I just kind of spun in the chair and threw it against the wall.
She says, Doug then grabbed the gun again and held it to his own head, threatening to kill myself. Did you do that?
No, I did not.
Ashley says at another point during that same argument, Doug physically abuses the family dog.
He hit Sully.
Your dog?
Sully got between us and he punched him.
At that same 2018 hearing, Doug tells a different version of this story to Ashley's attorney.
You also punched the dog the day that you discharged the firearm?
He jumped up in my lap. He's a big dog. I admit I hit him. I didn't hit him like you would, hit a punching bag or anything, but I hit him. But yes, I was probably too physical with him.
Were you beginning to rethink the marriage?
After he shot the gun in the house, that's when I really realized that I had a problem. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what was coming next.
What comes next for the couple is a bit surprising. A celebration of marriage 9 months after their initial hasty I do's.
They had a wedding ceremony right after that. Everyone's smiling. She's smiling.
People had already booked their tickets and everyone was coming. And I didn't want them to see that part of my life. I felt like a failure. I didn't know what else to do.
Even with their turbulent marriage, Doug and Ashley decide they want to have a child together. In August, you find out you're pregnant. What do you think initially?
I was scared. It was supposed to be like a happy thing, but my heart dropped. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Here again, Doug's story differs from Ashley's.
It wasn't an accident, of course, that she got pregnant. It was planned. Doug had had a vasectomy years ago. Ashley paid with her own credit card for Doug to have a vasectomy reversal, and they then started to try to get pregnant.
One thing both sides do agree on, Ashley had a difficult pregnancy.
It was rough.
Morning sickness?
Yeah, and it wasn't even morning sickness. It was like around the clock sickness. I couldn't eat. He couldn't take care of me. And he drove me down to Florida and dropped me off at my mom's house.
Doug's life is a whirlwind. He's got his hands full in Charleston with the ballet company and raising his teen daughter, Eva. And he's spending his free time driving to Florida to be with Ashley. The two are in constant communication.
Doug was driving back and forth to take care of his family, spread it across these two states. And he had to also be back in Charleston because on September 18th, this was going to be the big launch of the American National Ballet. Ashley was not going to be able to be present for the launch, supposedly because she was so sick.
But at that very moment, what Doug doesn't know is that Ashley and her mom are driving from Florida to Charleston, not to attend the ballet launch, but for an entirely different reason. On September 18th, you decided to move your belongings out of Doug's home.
Yeah.
She wrote a note alleging some things were wrong in the house and that there had been some abuse or at least violence on his part and that she was therefore leaving him.
Ashley writes, "Do not harass or try to follow me or I will call the police," and then goes on to say, "I will talk with you only via text," and "Do not call me or my mom. We will not pick up."
He was completely stunned. He had no idea Ashley was leaving him.
Just after learning that his wife is leaving him, Doug is again blindsided by a restraining order, barring him from contacting Ashley. The expectant dad then hires family attorney Stephanie Murphy to act as an intermediary.
Doug wanted to be present for the birth if Ashley felt comfortable. I sent the letter to Ashley asking, can Doug be part of the birth?
But Murphy says shortly after sending that letter, Ashley gives birth to a baby girl named Emerson, 3 weeks before her due date. Did you tell Doug?
No, there was a restraining order, so I couldn't legally have contact with him.
But he's the father of the child.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you intend for him to find out?
I mean, I knew he would eventually.
Doug didn't know that Ashley had given birth. He learned through an injunction that she filed that the child had been born, and that was several weeks after the child had been born.
Doug's not on the birth certificate. She didn't even give Doug the respect of naming his daughter Benefield. She gave the baby's last name as her grandfather's name. He was devastated. He was devastated that he missed the birth of his child and that he was not able to see her.
But Ashley says she was only doing what any mother would do. She believed that Doug was a danger, not only to her, but to her newborn daughter, too.
At first, I attributed it to morning sickness, but I started to wonder if there was more to it.
Every morning, you would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
It's April 2018. Ashley Benefield is a new mom, changing diapers, nursing her infant daughter. And at the same time, she's filing court papers seeking a protection order against her husband and the father of her baby, Doug Benefield.
So it would just basically put up a wall between Ashley and Doug.
It's not just that incident with the gun and the dog. Medical records suggest that she was in good health. Still, she says she had a growing suspicion that the terrible morning sickness she had wasn't just a routine part of her pregnancy. She wondered whether she was being poisoned by Doug.
It seemed like crazy and far-fetched, but I realized that the tea that he had been giving me, if I didn't drink it, he would get really mad at me. And I started to wonder if he was doing something to the tea.
She started telling me every morning he would make sure she drank the tea. Why? Why was that so important that she drink the tea?
I did some toxicology testing through hair testing.
And what did it reveal?
That I had been poisoned.
The results from the lab Ashley privately hires for her hair test show extremely high levels of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, tin. The tests on baby Emerson also detect toxic metals. So you're thinking that your husband, the man who loved you and seemed to adore you, would poison you?
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't know why.
Ashley says she became so concerned for her health that she resorted to some pretty serious measures, including more than 20 sessions inside a hyperbaric chamber like this one, along with her infant daughter. Ashley says her hope was that this high-pressure environment would help detoxify their blood. She insists that her fear that Doug had tried to poison them was real. Others call it fiction.
Doug never poisoned Ashley. Never. I read the allegations and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy.
Doug's family attorney points to those medical records during and after Ashley's pregnancy, showing her to be in good health.
The day after the baby was born, she was breastfeeding the baby. So which is it? Are you poisoned to the point that you are full of heavy metals, or are you okay and therefore you're going to breastfeed your baby? There's always been holes in the story.
A judge agrees, siding with Doug and his toxicology expert who challenged Ashley's test results. Her request to keep Doug away from her and their child is denied.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned.
A judge didn't believe you.
Yeah. I started to just feel like maybe I was crazy. Maybe it was all in my head.
So now Doug Benefield has moved into an apartment in Florida as the couple attempts to co-parent Emerson.
But things started to deteriorate. He was becoming very possessive and controlling again.
Doug has a tracking device put on Ashley's car, even hires a private investigator. His attorney says it wasn't unreasonable given Ashley's past allegations.
He never tried to hide the fact that he had put the tracker on the car. I think he wanted just to kind of figure out what's going on. Am I being lied to?
And then new concerns from Ashley.
She started coming home hurt. One day came back with her face very badly injured.
And what were you told?
He said that she was playing with bubbles and that she slipped and fell.
It was consistent with what happened. She fell on her face with a pacifier. Ashley, however, made another abuse allegation.
The sheriff's office and Child Protective Services investigate the claims and conclude that there are no indicators of injury or abuse.
None of these cases led to charges. The child protection team closed them without any findings, and then the sheriff's office closed them as unfounded.
Then, amidst all this tension, the Benefields make a decision that will confound everybody who knows them.
He had gotten a job in Maryland, and so we started talking about all moving.
Moving as a family to Maryland.
Not as a family, but moving, like together at the same time.
I was just stunned. I mean, and once again, Doug, what are you doing? She tried to ruin your life.
All along, Doug would tell everyone who knew him, I believe I can make this work.
How do you rationalize patching things up with a man who you think has been abusing your daughter?
He was her father. I wanted things to be as good as they could be.
But you know now that this sounds pretty dysfunctional.
Yeah. There didn't seem to be a good option.
So you're packing up. You're going to make this move. Doug comes over. Did you two begin arguing?
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together, telling me that wasn't how God intended it. He just flipped out, and it just kept escalating.
Escalating, she says, to the point of no return.
When you take a good man and a woman who's manipulative at her professional level, he's not ever going to play chess with her and win.
That bedroom was empty, other than 2 handguns.
We found that suspicious.
I was extremely concerned about Ashley's safety. Ashley was about to knock down that house of cards.
I don't think he could have ever guessed what was going to happen to him.
And what happened?
I had my gun. I told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
I've never been so scared in my life.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead. The wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Benefield's life is taking center stage at what's been dubbed the Black Swan murder trial.
Good morning, Miss Benefield.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's going to do something to him.
She just said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
Why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her.
This is all part of Ashley's crazy campaign to just annihilate Doug in every single way.
And starts moving his arms around. Well, show me. What was he doing?
We stand with Ashley! We stand with Ashley!
Even her own little daughter marching for her mom.
We stand with Ashley!
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
In the ballet world, it's known as the pas de deux, a duet, a step of two. For Ashley and Doug Benefield, a former ballerina and a businessman, their dance begins with a 13-day whirlwind courtship, plans to build a ballet company, and later, a baby. But the love affair turns dark and disturbing. Court battles, disputed allegations of poisoning, abuse. And in the finale, Doug and Ashley, seemingly about to reconcile and start anew, reach a sudden and tragic end. What happened in the moments before the gunshots rang out in this Florida community in September of 2020 will be scrutinized for years by investigators, by lawyers, and the media. Ashley Benefield has kept quiet about what she says happened that night until she sat down with me. How are you doing?
It depends on the moment. Just a lot of emotion, kind of like a roller coaster.
That roller coaster, Ashley says, took a sharp turn in the fall of 2020, when after 4 years of ups and downs, she and her husband, Doug, were preparing to move to Maryland. The plan, according to Ashley, was to continue living separately, just as they had in Florida.
He was constantly going back to this idea that we had to live together.
In these text messages from September 27th, the Benefields exchanged jokes, even emojis. Doug arrives at 5:30 with a U-Haul at the gated community where Ashley lives with her mom. Ashley's mom and daughter Emerson are out of the house at a nearby park. Ashley claims it isn't long before things go from friendly to fiery. Sounds like you guys are just agreeing to pack, and did you two begin arguing verbally? Was there yelling?
There was a back and forth.
She goes on to say that Doug becomes physically aggressive too, at one point bumping into her with a moving box and scraping her side. She then says she tries to diffuse the tension and asks him to leave.
He ended up trapping me, and I tried to leave. He hit me.
Where did he hit you? Did he threaten you?
He said I couldn't leave. I almost made it to the front door and he stopped me. I ran to my bedroom and he followed me there. Told him to stop. Sorry.
What led you to go for the gun?
He had never hit me before. I thought he would stop if he saw it.
What did you think was about to happen?
I thought he was actually going to kill me this time.
Did he have a gun?
Not that I could see. He told me I was done. And even though I was the one holding the gun, he plunged at me. I'm sorry.
You fired 4 times. You missed him twice. And when you hit him, what did you think?
I ran.
Ashley says she races out of her house over to a neighbor's home. Two residents who were out walking their dog who heard the shots described seeing a woman frantically running from the home.
Maine County 911, what is the emergency?
Okay, it's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Okay, what's his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
They said that Doug attacked me and I shot him. It was all a blur.
Did you think you had killed him?
I didn't know if he was behind me or chasing me or what. I didn't know.
I don't know. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
And at the end of that call, even though the neighbor had never seen Doug or Ashley fight, he tells the dispatcher something alarming.
Just between you and me, the son of a bitch has been harassing him and threatening him for a long time.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say that.
When law enforcement first arrived at the house following the 911 call, and they make it in the house, they find Doug.
He had a gunshot wound to his calf through and through. He had a gunshot wound to his right side chest area that landed in his back across on the left-hand side. Paramedics arrived. They continued CPR and took him to the hospital, but he was pronounced deceased at the hospital.
This is the man that you had loved, the father of your child. What did you make of it when you heard that he was dead?
I was horrified. It's like the worst nightmare.
A nightmare Ashley won't wake up from anytime soon.
That bedroom was essentially empty, other than 2 handguns.
One of them was in a backpack, hanging in the closet. One of them was just in a bin on top of a hamper. And we found that suspicious.
I think that definitely gave the detectives pause.
There was always this little thought in the back of my head that said Ashley's gonna do something to him. Ashley's gonna sabotage him somehow. There's a look in her eyes where she just looks like she finally got her way.
I remember thinking to myself, there's something wrong here.
Every morning, Doug reached out to Eva no matter where he was in the world.
He would either text me a good morning or he would send me a Bible verse. So I expected that.
And that morning, he didn't send it.
Or I texted him like 10 times. And then I said, Dad, this is scaring me.
Monday morning, I was in the office and I saw an email that Ashley's attorney sent said, we need to cancel Wednesday's hearing. Doug is dead. I had to call Doug's family. It was just heart-wrenching. The poor girl, I mean, she knew. She just said, my dad's dead, isn't he? And then she said, she killed him. She killed him, didn't she?
And I set my phone down and I said, I don't have parents anymore. I was just shaking violently for like 6 hours.
Doug Benefield's family and friends are grappling with unthinkably tragic news. And meantime, investigators are trying to make sense of what happened the night before.
The information that I had was that it was a domestic-related shooting. The husband was dead, the wife did the shooting, and she claimed self-defense.
Ashley is taken to the sheriff's office where attorneys from her family court case are waiting. You didn't give a statement. Why not?
My attorney is yelling to me in the parking lot. You know, don't say anything, don't say anything. I guess I was just following advice.
Ashley does consent to photos that she says document the swelling on her face where she says Doug hit her.
When I saw her that night after she left the police station, the left side of her face was swollen. She had obviously been struck. The next morning when she was changing a shirt, I saw the cut on her stomach.
But law enforcement contends that Ashley's injuries don't suggest a life or death struggle.
There was no swelling, there was no bruising, there was no difference in the way she looked. The entirety of the injuries that they found that were relevant was a scratch on her side, and that was it. They got pictures of every angle, of every place that the attorneys wanted them to take, and there were no injuries except for that scratch.
And investigators are also skeptical of Ashley's claims of being attacked because Doug was unarmed. She had access to 2 weapons. You said that you were a responsible gun owner, but why would you have a loaded gun in the house and you've got a child?
Well, the purpose of having a gun is for like a self-defense. The idea is that if something were to happen crazy in the middle of the night, that it would be accessible.
But when you've got a loaded gun that's basically sort of out in a bin, there are those who say that sounds really suspicious.
I mean, I feel like anything can be turned to try to make it look a certain way.
We found that suspicious, that someone would have 2 guns readily accessible in an empty room when everything else is in a U-Haul truck.
According to the medical examiner's report, the fatal gunshot entered the right side of Doug Benefield's chest. To investigators, that doesn't fit with somebody who's lunging toward her.
If someone were coming at you or attacking you, the entrance wound to the fatal shot would not be in the side.
And results from the forensic lab raise even more questions about Ashley's claim of self-defense.
And there was no stippling on Doug's shirt, so that told us that the barrel of the gun was at least 3 to 7 feet away, and that's the barrel of the gun, not even her body. So they were not in a combat life or death situation where they were locked together.
Just over a month after Doug Benefield is shot and killed, Ashley is charged with second-degree murder. She pleads not guilty.
The Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband.
Suspect for second-degree murder and the...
You're arrested. Charged with Doug's murder. What did you think?
I was shocked. I was blindsided by it.
In the minds of investigators, Doug Benefield's demise wasn't about self-defense. To them, it was Ashley's plan all along.
The whole lie, the whole deception is coming to an end.
Doug was going to find out your wife is lying to you.
There was a ticking clock. She was very, very afraid that Doug was going to take this child away from her. Very afraid.
But others insist the real victim here is Ashley.
Doug Benefield was anything but what he portrayed himself to be.
This is someone who is a predator, and this is someone who was not going to be stopped.
He told me that he killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
I always try to go and sit and watch the sunset when I can. There's so many good memories there. We chose to spread my dad's ashes on station 22.5, and that is the same station that my parents met.
We held a celebration. We raised a toast, a life well lived and a terrible ending to a life.
A life Doug's family insists was cut short by a woman they say was driven to destroy him.
No one at that memorial service in any way believe the story of Doug attacking Ashley, her shooting him out of fear. Doug still loved Ashley in spite of what she did to him, in spite of all the accusations, all the allegations.
I said, why do you keep going back? And he said, you know, I just want to show her that, like, I'm a good man and men can be good. And then he wanted Emerson to have a happy family.
He was willing to do whatever he had to do to be a part of Emerson's life.
And while it appears to some that the couple were trying for yet another fresh start, their family court case in Florida was still open. Both Ashley and Doug had been evaluated by a psychologist, and that report was completed just before the planned move to Maryland. Prosecutors insist the report about Ashley is crucial, that once released, Doug was going to learn that she had no intention of reconciling.
Ashley was afraid that Doug was going to take custody away from her. This is a judge that did not believe her theatrics, and if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be this judge.
And prosecutors believe the move to Maryland offers Ashley another chance and another court to keep Doug away from her and their child.
I believe that she was going to start everything again in Maryland and hope for a different result.
Were you thinking at all, you've got another state you can try to fight him for custody?
My hope was that if something was going wrong, that maybe in a fresh place, they would take it more seriously.
Ashley's mindset leading up to the shooting, prosecutors say, is critical. Was this a woman who truly feared for her life?
Text messages between Doug and Ashley leading up to that day, in the days ahead, and then the day of the homicide were very normal.
To say that someone couldn't have been defending themselves later in a day because of nice text messages that morning is absurd. Doug was always like a flip of a switch.
He could turn on a dime. He could be very happy. He could be charming. But then, for no reason at all, he could get very upset. We kept on asking for help. It's been years of absolute hell. And we went from one abuser to a system that is abusing a victim.
Were you an abused woman?
Yeah, I didn't think so at first. I remember like trying to argue, no, like it's not like that. You know, I don't have broken bones and black eyes.
Most incidents of domestic violence are subtle, where the offender uses isolation, financial control, threatening, verbal abuse, things that the general public doesn't necessarily see. But these are also things that the victim doesn't always know is abuse.
There was no evidence to indicate that she was truly a victim of abuse in the months leading up to the homicide when they were not even living together.
In the months before the shooting, Ashley reaches out to a domestic violence agency and eventually connects with a therapist, Dr. Barbara Russell, who becomes a trusted friend and advocate.
This relationship was very controlling. He was incessantly sending her text messages saying that all of the men that are probably flirting with her need to be exterminated like rats. And then he would shift gears and talk to her very lovingly and sweetly. Like most domestic violence situations, it escalated. He would push her, he would lock her in bathrooms.
During one of those alleged incidents early in their relationship, Ashley claims Doug admitted something about his late wife that terrified her.
He had always told me that they had this fairy tale marriage, that they never fought. And then I found messages.
Text messages, she says, reveal a side of Doug that Ashley claims she saw in her own marriage.
She said one time he kicked her really hard. He had secretly videotaped them starting on their honeymoon. One time we were having an argument and he told me that he had killed Renee.
He told you he had killed his wife?
And he said that he could make me disappear too.
an investigation was done. There was no finding of foul play in any way. There was a full autopsy.
The coroner in Renee's death investigation ruled that she died of natural causes due to a heart condition.
Ashley tried to convince me that my dad killed my mom. I said, Dad, this is what she's doing. She was just kind of like, we're going to therapy, things will be okay. Obviously, I didn't kill your mom.
This was all part of Ashley's crazy campaign. Ashley wanted to keep Doug away from that kid at the expense of everything and everyone else. She would not stop.
Her goal was never to get rid of Doug. Her goal was to keep her daughter safe. That's very different than wanting to kill somebody.
Two starkly different portraits of Ashley Benefield. Is she a murderer?
Benefield taking center stage at what has been dubbed the Black Swan murder trial.
Or a victim who stood her ground?
He told her she was finished.
He's coming at you and you have nowhere to go. What do? You shoot to protect yourself.
A legal strategy that could keep Ashley free.
This is the one chance at this point that we have to end it all now.
We stand with Ashley, mother, daughter, sister, friend.
All right, here, how about I push you this way? You ready? Yeah.
So what's summer been like for you two?
Emerson does a lot of swimming, right?
Yeah, I can swim alone pretty much.
So you're getting to be a strong swimmer.
Great job.
Ashley Benefield has spent several years under house arrest, living with her mom and daughter Emerson, who's now 5, while awaiting trial for second-degree murder.
Here we are, climbing trees, catching geckos.
This has been hanging, in the balance really for years now. And in the same time, you're trying to mother.
It definitely wouldn't be what I would pick, but I'm thankful for all the good things that we have. She's an amazing little girl. I love being her mommy.
Meanwhile, the other daughter, caught in the middle, 22-year-old Eva Benefield, found her own way to process her pain.
When I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition.
I had been on TikTok for a few months, and I thought, oh, that'd be funny if I made a joke about my dad being murdered. I made a TikTok, and I put my phone down, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and it was at 700,000 likes. And then it just kept going and going and going. It got 3 million likes and 10 million views. And within 2 weeks, I had 100,000 followers.
Eva has gone from grieving and stuck in trauma to getting help to finding an outlet in her art.
Eva, Doug's daughter, does not support you. Do you want to say anything to her?
My heart's broken for her. She has been through so much. I wouldn't even know where to start.
In February 2023, Ashley's legal team files a motion to dismiss under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The law allows the use of deadly force if a person believes that that force is necessary to prevent imminent death or to prevent a violent crime without any expectation to retreat.
Doug stopped her from fleeing her home. Well, that would be false imprisonment, and that would qualify as a violent felony, which would give her the right to use deadly force.
Ashley's defense filed a 105-page motion presenting her version of the night she shot Doug. For his family, it was the first time hearing her side.
The story they've made up is as implausible as everything else she ever made up about Doug and their relationship. It's implausible that any of that occurred the way she and her lawyer have told it.
The court found enough merit in Ashley's motion to grant her a hearing, Now the burden of proof shifts to the state to prove that Ashley did not act in self-defense.
The prosecution has to basically put on a trial, but it's just a hearing in front of a judge.
Well, with this hearing, we have the opportunity to put a stop to the proceedings. Then I get my life back.
Doug's family travels to Florida to attend the hearing.
It feels a little weird just because the last time I was here was when my dad was alive.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are on the record in the state of Florida versus Ashley Benefield.
The state calls 8 witnesses, including Doug's family members and law enforcement, who testify that Ashley had no significant injuries to justify self-defense.
Did you have a crime scene technician take photographs of her?
We did.
And why did you want pictures?
I didn't notice any kind of injuries, things that you would typically see during a physical altercation.
For their part, the defense relied solely on the details laid out in the 105-page motion filed before the hearing, calling no witnesses.
There was no independent evidence that refuted her version of events. I believe this motion compels the court to grant it. Thank you for the court's patience.
Judge didn't rule from the bench. They typically do not. After the hearing ended, we just had to wait for a written order.
It would take 2 months, but ultimately the judge would deny Ashley Benefield's stand your ground motion, saying the state had shown the shooting was not in self-defense. Now, out of options, Benefield will have to face a jury of her peers in this courthouse.
And happening right now, potential jurors being questioned in what people are calling the Black Swan trial.
The Black Swan trial.
Black Swan murder trial.
The Black Swan has a catchy ring, and it sensationalizes my life. And it's sad to me that people who don't even know me have this idea of a monster.
But not everybody sees her that way.
We stand with Ashley. We stand with Ashley.
Dozens of protesters here at the Manatee County Courthouse marching in defense of Ashley Benefield.
And the littlest supporter marching out there also happens to be one of Ashley's biggest defenders.
She kept on asking, Mommy, can I go? Can I go? I want to be part of this. I want to stand up for my mommy. I don't want to be without my mommy. And
With Ashley Benefield now facing the possibility of life in prison, the big question is, will the jury believe her?
The entire dynamic of the trial shifting today as Ashley Benefield made her way to the stand.
The stakes for Ashley were extremely high.
I was hoping that they would call Ashley.
There's nowhere to go. I was trapped.
I really just wanted them to see Ashley for Ashley.
I thought he was gonna kill me.
Testimony in the so-called Black Swan murder trial happening in Manatee County.
Supporters rallying behind Ashley Benefield. Benefield is the Manatee County woman charged with shooting and killing her husband, Doug Benefield.
After nearly 4 years, Ashley Benefield finally gets her day in court, where she's hoping to prove that she shot her husband, Doug, in self-defense.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
All right, state, call your first witness.
The prosecution gets to work building its case.
State calls Stephanie Murphy,
calling Doug Benefield's family attorney to the stand.
At the time the child was born, did you or Doug know that the child was born?
No, gosh, we didn't know for a good 5 or 6 weeks after she was born.
All right, who is your next witness?
Detective Chris Gillum.
All right.
The state also calls the detective who spoke with Ashley back in 2018 when he investigated her claims that Doug had abused their daughter.
She asked for me to arrest Doug when he came inside the courtroom in front of the presiding judge.
And what was your reaction to that?
That absolutely would not occur.
And how did she take that?
She was upset.
I think it was very important testimony. It was a snapshot into the real Ashley Benefield.
Her tone turned very aggressive, and she says, "You will arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure you do it." And she says, "I'll do whatever I have to do to keep my baby, you a-hole."
Ashley's side insists she was only trying to protect her child from a man she was terrified of.
Defense would call Dr. Jason Quintel.
They call a mental health counselor who saw both Doug and Ashley.
Did you conclude whether there was an intimidation issue present?
Ashley stated that she was scared of Doug.
Did you reach any conclusions with respect to Douglas Benefield?
Doug occurred as someone who was domineering, and the terminology that I would use at times would be super controlling. He would fit the stereotype of an alpha male, in my opinion.
The defense also turns to a domestic violence expert to explain why, even though Ashley claimed she was living in fear, it may not have always looked that way from the outside.
How common is it, Mr. Ferris, for a victim of domestic violence to smile and act happy in the company of the abuser?
Very much so, because they're afraid. They found this least resistance. They're trying to not poke the bear, as we'll say.
Doug didn't verbally abuse her, never physically touched her. He would be angry over how she tried to ruin his life, but the anger never came out in inappropriate ways.
Then the defense calls the one person they believe can convince the jury of Ashley's innocence.
The defense calls Ashley Benefield. How are you feeling this morning, Ashley?
Nervous.
The questioning quickly turning to the night of the shooting.
I ran to try to leave the house. He hit me on the side of the head. He had never actually hit me before.
What did you do?
I ran. Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, it didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black. I just held the gun like in front of me, and I said, "Stop." And he like turned and he got into this like a fighting stance. I thought he was gonna kill me.
Somehow, Ashley Benefield found the strength to testify on her own behalf. And I thought she did it extremely well. Judge, I wonder, could we have a minute?
Ashley used a lot of theatrics, a lot of, in my opinion, acting. Looking her in the face, it did not seem genuine to me.
Ma'am, there's Kleenexes here next to you. Those.
Okay, thank you.
Even though she cried hysterically numerous times, there was not one tear.
In her cross-examination, prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell presses Ashley about that moment she says Doug hit her in the head.
You say he slapped you?
I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. In direct examination, she knew the color of his eyes and the way he was acting. And when I asked her, did he hit you with an open hand or a closed hand, she didn't know. Wouldn't you know if someone hit you with a fist versus an open hand? Judge, if I could have her step down so she can demonstrate.
You may.
I absolutely wanted to get her down off of the stand because she would have been that much closer to the jury. Okay, so he's standing there. He turns to like this and starts moving his arms around.
Like that.
Well, show me. What was he doing?
Kind of like, I don't know, he got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know, I'm not a fighter, I don't know.
Okay. This was the time to show the jury exactly what this person was doing. Why were you so scared? And she just couldn't do it. And I believe that that was because it didn't really happen.
And O'Donnell zeroes in on the physical evidence, arguing that it contradicts Ashley's claims of self-defense.
So I want to talk a little bit about this trajectory. The fatal bullet went in the side of the chest and almost came out the other side of the back. Her story was he starts to lunge at her. If she then lifted the gun and shot, it would go in his chest and right out his back. It would not go side to side.
Everybody unanimously agreed that the wound path of that projectile was from front to back, left to right. Well, I don't care how much you would like to move front to back to the side, it is still front to back. Ashley's action on that day was absolutely justified. She had the right to stand her ground and use force, including deadly force. For the last several years, I've walked hand in hand with Ashley. I'm now going to surrender her fate to you.
So all of you may now retire to consider your verdict.
Any minute now, Ashley Benefield could learn her fate.
I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind.
6 hours into the deliberations, tensions began building in the jury room.
And then at approximately 10 o'clock, the jurors sent out a note.
When they came back, I feel a sinking feeling. We were heavy-hearted at that moment.
Are you envisioning what it might be like to hear guilty?
Yeah, I've played out, I guess, both scenarios in my mind. I mean, part of this just doesn't seem real. I keep thinking maybe one day I'll wake up from the nightmare and realize that none of this happened.
Jurors still deliberating after closing arguments.
It's 10 p.m. The jury in Ashley Benefield's case has been deliberating for 6 hours. Then, a message from the foreperson.
I've received a note from you. It says, unable to come to unanimous verdict.
Even worse than a not guilty would be a hung jury, because then the family has to go through this again. We just need some finality.
But the judge encourages the jurors to keep deliberating and try to come to a consensus.
We'll be in recess until we get another question or a verdict.
And less than an hour later...
Breaking news, we have a verdict.
When I saw that there was a verdict a half an hour later, my heart was in my throat.
We, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
The jury does not find Ashley guilty of second-degree murder. Instead, they convict her of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
We were hopeful for a second-degree murder conviction, but we were very, very satisfied with a manslaughter conviction.
Ashley learns she'll be sentenced at a later date.
The sound was as good as the sight. We're very thankful that she was taken off to jail.
If she hadn't had her gun that night, I know without a shadow of a doubt my daughter would be dead. I am sure of it. Why do they not believe women? Why should women live in fear?
I feel that Ashley was abusing a system that is designed to help people that are victims. Sets everyone back and makes it so much harder for those people that really are victims.
I'll tell you, the hardest part of that verdict was not in the courtroom. It was when we came back to our office without Ashley. Emerson was there waiting for her mom, but she wouldn't leave right around that elevator. She just stayed there.
This case has always been sad to me because there are children involved that had nothing to do with this. Emerson's without her father and probably going to be without her mother now for a long time. Doug's family got justice. Eva's still without her father.
Today kind of just feels like the first day of the rest of my life. I hope one day me and Emerson will be able to have a relationship where she can come to me with any questions, and I hope that one day I'll be able to explain how great of a father my dad would have been to her and how great he was for the short amount of time that they got to spend together.
Ashley Benefield is scheduled to be sentenced next month. David, she faces up to 30 years in prison.
And as for Doug and Ashley's 6-year-old daughter, Emerson, she's currently living with Ashley's mother now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
A gregarious young man, just months away from his wedding day.
He was always happy. All he wanted in life was to have a family, work hard, and fall in love.
Has his future viciously ripped away.
It was evident the young man had been bludgeoned.
It hurt me so much, and I lost it. I lost it. Me volví loca.
Investigators are sent down a rabbit hole of suspects.
He was violently jealous. He's a significant drug dealer. It looked like that he may have been kidnapped.
They were accompanying a very scared-looking Hispanic young man.
Before a shocking revelation.
What he was describing was more like something off of a TV show.
Turns the case on its head.
What he did to us changed our life forever.
It was a shock to all of us.
It came as an absolute surprise.
He had no remorse, he had no guilt.
Cornelius, a small town in northern Oregon, nestled among picturesque orchards.
Cornelius is a longtime farming community. It's a very kind of nice, sort of sleepy place.
It's kind of a little bedroom community. It's mostly a blue-collar town, working class.
The calm of Cornelius is shaken one quiet morning with the reported disappearance of 20-year-old Gonzalo Pizano Guzman.
That morning, my mom saw that Gonzalo's bed was made, like no one slept there. So she obviously got all concerned. He didn't come home last night. And then my mom tells me to go to the police station with Sol to report him missing.
His fiancée, Sol, and his sister, Juana, had been actively looking for him that day.
That morning, the family contacted his place of employment. He had not shown up for work.
The family was extremely distraught by this disappearance. He doesn't miss work without calling in. They couldn't reach him by pager or by telephone.
And we're all freaking out because this is not who he is and what he does. It's so odd, it's not normal.
We learned that Saul had seen Gonzalo the night before. They had visited with each other until about 9:15 that evening, and Saul reported seeing him leaving in his car alone, headed home.
But he did not return home last night.
To aid the detectives, Saul provides a description of what Gonzalo was wearing when she last saw him.
He had on an athletic top with some numbers on it, and specifically 2 gold chains.
While Juana and Saul speak with police, other family members frantically look for Gonzalo.
We all went different ways in our cars, driving around just to see if we found his car. We were trying to look for anything.
My dad thought, maybe he got in an accident. We were desperate. We just wanted a clue.
Around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we all started feeling like, okay, something's wrong now.
On the outskirts of town, Gonzalo's father makes a disturbing discovery.
My dad spotted the car in an empty field. When he saw the car, the white car, he knew right away that was Gonzalo's car. He found the car burned up. He rushed to the car, opened up the car, and didn't find any body. So once that happened, it was just nuts. Where is he at? Did he get kidnapped? Is he dead? It was even worse.
Detectives arrive and search for signs of what happened to Gonzalo.
The car was totally destroyed by fire. It appeared that the car had been heavily doused with accelerant, probably gasoline.
Somebody was clearly trying to cover up evidence from inside that vehicle.
There was no evidence of any body.
There were zip ties found near the car.
As far as the scene was concerned, it yielded minimal clues. As the car had been burned completely, the chances of DNA or blood or fingerprints were greatly reduced.
Later that afternoon, another chilling discovery is made, just 11 miles away.
A citizen had seen something that looked like a dead body in the ditch on her road. The body was found about a 15-20 minute drive from where the burned car was.
This young man matched both the physical description, the clothing, and the jewelry. At this point, there was no doubt that this was Gonzalo. It was clearly a homicide. There was evidence of bullet wounds on the body and what appeared to be repeated knife blows to the heart. We also discovered some injuries to the back of the head, and it was evident the young man had been bludgeoned.
It was apparent that he died a violent death.
We felt almost immediately that this was very personal in nature. There was no phone and there was no wallet at the scene, but he still had his jewelry with him, which were gold. So the thought of this being a robbery was off the table pretty quickly. There was another motive here.
There were zip ties found near the body, and they matched the zip ties from the scene of the car. One of the things that went through my head was, had someone brought zip ties to restrain Gonzalo? We also located 4 spent casings from a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
After finishing up at the crime scene, police are faced with the difficult task of delivering the devastating news to Gonzalo's family.
The police came early in the morning. I opened the door and they told me, "We found your brother, but unfortunately he's dead." I was in shock.
Grité. Me volví loca. Y yo gritaba. Y gritaba y gritaba. I heard my mom screaming. It was something I never want to hear again. It's not even a scream. It's a pain so deep that only moms know what that is. I found out that he was murdered. And I lost it. I lost it. Era gritar, llorar. Algo tan fuerte que todavía de mi mente no se ha acabado. To know that such an amazing person was taken away, he didn't deserve to die that way. Bottom line is, I don't have my brother anymore.
Born in Mexico in 1979, Gonzalo had a playful spirit.
He loved to dance, he loved music, always a smile, always caring, and always joking around with people.
Gonzalo era un muchacho alegre y llegaba, me abrazaba y siempre quería bailar conmigo.
When the family moved to the United States in 1989, outgoing Gonzalo settled in quickly.
He was very charming. He was really good looking. He was popular with the girls. So he was always asked to be in quinceañeras, which is a traditional, party for us Mexicans when you turn 15.
In 1998, Gonzalo met Marisol Mora at a party, and the teenagers quickly fell in love.
De que estaba muy enamorado de Marisol. Marisol era el amor de su vida de Gonzalo. Era todo para él. Todo.
It was that genuine love and happiness. There was a light in him. He was a completely different person, a happy, full person. All he wanted in life was to have a family, work hard, and fall in love.
After a whirlwind romance, Gonzalo proposed to Marisol.
So the wedding was set to be in September. That was just a couple of months after he was murdered. We have a big family, so it was going to be a big deal.
But instead of a wedding, Gonzalo's loved ones are left heartbroken and grieving. While his family plans a funeral, detectives are digging into the work of this homicide case.
This case was puzzling. There really didn't seem to be a strong motive as to why this young man was murdered. Everything was going good in his life.
He was responsible. He wasn't involved in gangs.
He's just very well liked, very upbeat, and just a trustworthy young man.
It was really difficult. There were still so many unanswered questions, and we had no definitive leads as to who would have caused this or who we were looking for.
The fact that there was still a killer out there, to me, it was very ominous.
This is very grim. We needed to really look into who was responsible for this.
Coming up, investigators uncover a menacing grudge.
He held an extreme dislike for Gonzalo.
He was determined to have Gonzalo killed.
The knife wounds directed at the heart did speak of extreme animosity.
And leads them to discover a web of alarming secrets and lies.
She wasn't in love with Gonzalo, and he wasn't in love with her.
She admitted it was all a lie.
He saw skinheads in the vehicle.
And that's when we really started to think something was wrong.
Before the truth blindsides everyone.
I was like in shock. It was so senseless. It was so senseless.
Police are investigating the vicious murder of 20-year-old Gonzalo Pizano Guzman. Wanting more details about his last known movements, detectives speak to his fiancée, Sol.
She described in detail how Gonzalo had come to her house on the night of the 6th, that they sat out front on the porch.
They were discussing their plans for the upcoming wedding and going over a guest list. She stated that following the conversation that he left around 9 o'clock. She stated while they were sitting on the porch that her cousin Jaime and a friend Eddie were playing in the garage of the house, apparently shooting baskets.
That led us to believe that these two young fellows may have been the last known persons to see Gonzalo alive. So it was important that we interview them.
Investigators bring Jaime and Eddie into the sheriff's office.
During the interview, both stated that they had to get to work that night and approached Gonzalo as he was getting in his car and asked if they could get a ride.
They were running late for work. They worked on a janitorial crew run by Saul's brother, Raphael.
They had to be at work in Hillsboro at the Hawthorne Farms Fitness Center at 10 o'clock.
They said Raphael picked them up and took them to work at the athletic club, and that eventually they got off at about 4:30 in the morning.
The fact that they both gave the same statement actually provided themselves an alibi. They did not offer any conflict that they had with Gonzalo. They indicated that they had no reason to hurt him.
To corroborate Jaime and Eddie's alibi, police speak to their boss, Saul's brother, Raphael.
We interviewed him at his house. He was very cooperative, very smooth, very polite, had his own business, a young entrepreneur.
Raphael was an incredibly self-possessed 19-year-old. He had created a janitorial service.
Although he was very young, had a very good contract, had his own cleaning company, and appeared to be very successful.
Detectives ask him to confirm Jaime and Eddie's story.
He confirmed that he had picked them up at Eddie's house and drove them to work. He confirmed their story that they had worked cleaning the health club that night. He said that he was at the athletic club until about 4 in the morning. So Raphael, in effect, corroborates Eddie and Jaime's version of events on the night of the 6th. So we kind of set them aside.
With Jaime and Eddie alibied, investigators turned to the autopsy report, hoping to find new leads.
It became very apparent just how violently he had died.
The medical examiner did find 3 blunt force blows to his skull.
The autopsy also showed that he had been shot 5 times. And then he had also been stabbed 5 times, very brutally, in the area of the heart.
The close cluster of the knife wounds directed at the heart did speak of extreme animosity, some violent emotion.
The gunshot wounds made it appear that his hands were up in a defensive gesture.
Gonzalo was likely pleading for some measure of mercy, and ultimately, none was to be had.
The autopsy report also determines that Gonzalo's death occurred around 10 p.m.
With the findings in hand, investigators now turn to Gonzalo's workplace, searching for possible suspects.
We interviewed his supervisor. Gonzalo's boss described him as reliable, steady worker, punctual.
As detectives dig deeper, they learn about a startling new side to Gonzalo.
It appeared that he had a relationship with one of the security guards that worked there.
Gonzalo's boss did tell us there may have been some possible involvement between the security guard, Bobette, and Gonzalo. So we needed to look into it. We needed to interview her.
Police bring Bobette, Gonzalo's alleged girlfriend, in for questioning.
She was very upset about his death.
She was very emotional, very distraught about finding out that Gonzalo had been murdered, and ultimately disclosed that, in fact, she had had a very intimate relationship with Gonzalo for a couple months. But she made it very clear she wasn't in love with Gonzalo, and he wasn't in love with her.
Bobette described her relationship with Gonzalo as kind of a fling. It was kept secret. She understood that he was engaged to be married, but it crossed our minds that maybe Bobette's feelings were stronger than she let on.
Maybe she did not want this wedding to go forward. The wedding was planned for September, only a few months away. Police asked Gonzalo's coworker about her movements on the day of the murder.
Bobette had been at several different locations that day, running errands, and she had receipts to support that. So she was ruled out as a suspect.
But while Bobette's cleared of suspicion, she hands detectives a crucial tip.
Bobette mentioned an ex-boyfriend named Oscar Rodriguez.
She told us Oscar was quite jealous.
He was extraordinarily jealous, apparently had been violently jealous in the past.
About 4 days before the murder, Oscar had found out about her relationship with Gonzalo. He became infuriated and began accusing her of cheating on him. That could be a motive for Gonzalo's murder, so Oscar became a lead suspect.
Only 2 days into the investigation of the vicious murder of Gonzalo Pizano Guzman, police discover he was involved with his coworker, Bobette. Now she's pointed the finger at her jealous ex, Oscar Rodriguez.
She speculated that maybe he had something to do with it. We looked into him. He had a criminal history.
He'd been pretty extensively involved in gangs at that point in his life, and he was well known to the local police.
Very much an impulsive young man that was also involved in drug activity and drug use. Bobette told us that this was a relationship she had to escape from. She personally felt threatened by his presence and his behavior. And she was very worried that perhaps he was the one that took some action towards Gonzalo.
Investigators uncover a troubling detail about Oscar's life.
It was discovered that Oscar Rodriguez's mother lived right next door to the victim's family. The investigation kind of perked up as far as focusing in on Oscar, given the fact that he had such access to Gonzalo.
Detective suspicion grows further when they speak to Oscar himself.
When Oscar Rodriguez was interviewed, he lied to us and told us he had not had any contact at all with Bobette and didn't really know anything about what was going on. When we started to confront him that this was in contradiction to the information that we had from Bobette, he became furious, started yelling at us, "You don't trust me." He stated he had no claims to continue any relationship with Bobette, and he wanted to wash his hands of this entire investigation. Because of his nature, he just drew suspicion upon himself. He was asked if he'd take a polygraph to show that he didn't have anything to do with Gonzalo's murder. He became very volatile and immediately demanded to end the interview. And actually stormed out of the interview.
With Oscar not cooperating, detectives investigate his whereabouts during the time of the murder.
During this time frame, Oscar Rodriguez was actually serving a sentence in the Restitution Center.
The Restitution Center is a work-release facility for low to mid-level offenders, where Oscar could get passes to go out and find work. So the question was, did Oscar have a pass at the date and time of the murder? Was it possible that he wasn't in the restitution center?
He is on a strict timeline. He had to check in, check out. It's a secure facility. The building is locked. There are alarms on all the doors and windows.
At the restitution center, there is a lockdown period at night until early in the morning.
After the records were examined, it was positively concluded that he was in the restitution center at the time Gonzalo was killed.
It was impossible for him to have been involved in the actual homicide.
And ultimately, he was ruled out as a suspect.
It's been a week since the murder, and the investigation is no closer to finding a suspect. Meanwhile, the family prepares to bury their beloved Gonzalo.
It was really hard on everybody. My mom decided she wanted to take him to Mexico. He was buried over there, and we all stayed for a while trying to grieve together as a family and process what had just happened to our family. My mom was just devastated.
It hurt me so much to lose Gonzalo. I was grieving deeply. I was in denial. I was in my own world. And I don't even know how I got by.
While the family grieves in Mexico, the community of Cornelius is feeling on edge.
There wasn't a quick arrest within a couple days or a week. This caused concern in the community because no one knew who did it.
Searching for new leads, detectives turn to the public.
We decided to put out a reward for information, and the idea was to get people to come forward if they knew anything and let them know that we're a little bit frustrated with where this investigation is going. We need public help.
Nearly 2 weeks after Gonzalo's murder, police get a tip that sends the investigation in a whole new direction.
We got a call from an employee of the SB gas station.
His name was Ryan Petty. He claimed that he had seen some graffiti written in the bathroom of the gas station. And the graffiti said, Gonzalo Guzman, 12th Street Gang, please help, call the police.
And once he heard about the reward, he put Gonzalo with that name Gonzalo and recognized it must be the same victim who had left that cry for help on the wall.
Detectives rush to the gas station to interview Ryan. While interviewing him, he divulges a shocking revelation.
So what called his attention to the bathroom was shortly before he saw a car pull up, a white Monte Carlo, that had, in his words, skinheads in the vehicle.
One of them allegedly had a swastika tattooed on his body.
They were accompanying a very scared-looking Hispanic young man.
He stated that it looked like that Gonzalo may have been kidnapped. That was significant in the fact that we felt this was a big break that came in the case.
Guzman was found brutally murdered. A gas station attendant named Ryan Petty has told police he saw Gonzalo with 3 suspicious men the night he was killed.
He described a carload of skinheads that had drove up and a young man in the back seat who appeared frightened, and they escorted him into the men's restroom for a short period of time.
He said that ultimately out of the bathroom, the Hispanic individual came out and they hustled him back into the car and drove away. So Ryan Petty reported that when he went into the bathroom after an individual left it, he saw written on the wall, Gonzalo Guzman, help 12th Street Gang, call police.
But as detectives dig into Ryan's story, some details don't add up.
Had it been Gonzalo who had gone into that bathroom afraid for his life and put his name on the wall, he never would have written his name as Gonzalo Guzman.
We knew that was incorrect. He would not sign his name in that nature. That was the maternal name. He would have used the paternal name.
Guzman is his mother's name. He would have written his name as Gonzalo Pazano. Pazano is his father's name.
And so right away this was suspicious.
And just the whole nature of what he was describing was more like something off of a TV show. The skinheads, the swastika. It just didn't ring true.
And so it was suspected that he was trying to come forward for the reward. We looked through the videotape from the SB station during the period of time this employee stated that car had gone by. There was nothing in that videotape that corroborated anything he had told us.
No white Monte Carlo, no individuals who could be characterized as skinheads. More importantly, no individual who was a scared Hispanic person being escorted to the bathroom.
The examination of the surveillance video at the gas station contradicted Ryan Petty's version of events. And also, one of the issues was he didn't report this right away.
When police check Ryan's record, they find more troubling news.
He had a pretty checkered past.
He was no stranger to the criminal justice system.
Some of his arrests were for crimes that would cause you to doubt his honesty. In my mind, we ruled it out as pure fabrication. It just was too cute, too stereotypical. The mistake with the Spanish surname, I didn't buy it.
With another lead exhausted, investigators face a daunting realization.
We reached a point where we were getting nowhere. Leads weren't panning out.
Having no significant suspect is very depressing.
Really, if you don't solve these cases early on, the longer they go, the likelihood that you're actually going to be able to solve them becomes less and less.
In cases like this where we're not getting anywhere, especially on a homicide, we took this very personal. Up to that point, this team had not had an unresolved homicide.
The lack of progress also adds to the pain suffered by Gonzalo's family.
It was very hard. It was very painful to come back from Mexico and there was no arrest yet.
Fue algo fuerte para mí, mucho dolor. Tenía mucho coraje y mucho odio en mi corazón.
Everything was very silent, and we were getting very, very impatient. My mom was getting very impatient with the detectives, and all they told us is to please trust them. So we put our life in their hands.
2 more months pass without an arrest. With the case at a standstill, detectives review the entire investigation for something they may have missed.
It can be very frustrating when you reach that point where you've kind of hit the wall, but you just have to resolve to redouble your efforts and to keep digging, keep pushing.
It was time to go back and look over everybody one more time. We knew that Eddie and Jaime were the last people to see Gonzalo at Saul's house the night of the murder.
Even though they'd been interviewed and gave a pretty good account of their activity that night, their boss, Raphael, provided an alibi for them. We wanted to be sure. So at this stage is when we asked them to take a polygraph. But when we began to ask them to take a polygraph, they started dodging and weaving.
For some reason, they began to balk, and this threw a red flag as to why they weren't coming forward. Again, these are the last 2 people to see Gonzalo alive. And now they're getting cold feet about taking a polygraph exam.
And that's when we really started to think something was wrong.
Detectives keep the pressure on Jaime and Eddie, and on September 14th, Eddie comes in for his polygraph.
The polygrapher was hooking Eddie up, attaching these leads to him to measure his response. And he doesn't even get to the questions. And Eddie says, "Okay, I'll tell you what happened."
And he immediately makes it clear that he wants to tell everything that happened.
In police parlance, he spilled it.
Detectives are re-interviewing witnesses, hoping for a break. Now, Eddie, one of the last people to see Gonzalo alive, has told police he knows more than he's let on.
He gave a detailed, recorded statement about what happened on the night of the murder.
As he talks to investigators, Eddie drops a bombshell.
He disclosed that he had actually been approached by his boss, Raphael, who is Saul's brother, to coordinate delivering Gonzalo to the Forest Hills Country Club parking lot.
Eddie told us that it had all been planned out by Raphael. Raphael had enlisted Joe Noble to help with this crime. Joe was Rafael's friend. Eddie went on to tell us that night he and Jaime lured Gonzalo to drive his car to the golf course. And as they pulled up, Joe Noble appeared with a gun in his hand. And as Eddie and Jaime got out of Gonzalo's car, Noble got into the car, pointing the gun at Gonzalo. And also present in the parking lot was Rafael and his white Ford F-150.
Gonzalo was driven away by Rafael and Joe, but Eddie claims he has no idea what happened next.
He stated that he and Jaime had left the country club and got into their vehicle, left and went home and went to work as usual.
Could the brother of Gonzalo's fiancée, Saul, really be behind his brutal murder?
It was extremely surprising to suddenly see Rafael Mora as somebody different than this really incredibly self-possessed 19-year-old who started his own business.
But according to Eddie, Rafael leads a disturbing double life.
Eddie told us that Rafael was a pretty active drug dealer.
The nice entrepreneur cover of Rafael was all a lie. He's a significant drug dealer, and it appears orchestrated the kidnapping of Gonzalo with Joe Noble.
This completely surprised me. Rafael did appear, at least on the surface, to be legit, and now he's not who we thought he was.
It was a shock to all of us.
The one thing detectives still need to know is why Rafael would want to kill his future brother-in-law.
Up to that point in time, there was nothing to link him. There was no motive that anybody could speak of.
Investigators first turned their attention to Joe Noble, suspecting he may have been taking orders from Rafael.
Joe Noble was known as a small-time criminal. An informant told us he was very concerned about a .40 caliber pistol he had sold to Joe Noble. And he suspected that this may have been the murder weapon used in the killing of Gonzalo.
That's not the last of the informant's revelations.
He said that Joe Noble had talked to a female at one of the local bars and had asked her to alibi for him on the particular night in question.
We contacted her. She told us that yes, Joe had asked her to say he was with her on the night of the 6th, and most importantly, she said I wasn't with him.
Police bring Joe in for questioning.
Joe denied having any involvement whatsoever to the murder.
During our interview with Joe, he actually tried to use the alibi, and then when we confronted him with the fact that we'd already talked to her and she said it was all BS, then he stopped talking.
Joel stated that he wanted an attorney and didn't want to talk anymore.
With nothing concrete to hold Joe, police are forced to release him and turn their attention to Rafael.
Investigators learned that Rafael's cleaning business was not all that it was purported to be. He had a contract with the Hawthorne Farms Athletic Club.
The manager of the health club was not very impressed with the quality of Rafael's work and the work of his crew.
It was really a shoddy operation by all accounts.
We considered the fact that the cleaning company may have been a front for Rafael's drug dealing.
Rafael told police he was cleaning the gym with Eddie and Jaime the night of Gonzalo's murder. So investigators checked with management in order to corroborate his alibi.
The manager of the club said he often couldn't reach him. So we had no idea if he was there or not on the night of the murder.
With his alibi falling apart, detectives asked Rafael's sister, Saul, why he might want Gonzalo dead.
Saul admitted that Rafael had had a serious talk with her and that it was clear that he was opposed to the wedding, felt she was too young.
Rafael did not want Gonzalo marrying Sol.
Just did not see Gonzalo as being worthy of marrying into the family. Investigators learned that Rafael would mock Gonzalo for the car he drove. He'd mock him for bringing over a bottle of wine to his parents that was cheap and not any good.
Rafael held an extreme dislike for Gonzalo. When accompanied by friends, he would go by Gonzalo's car and talk about keying it or smashing a window out and laughing about it.
With the evidence against Rafael stacking up, police are ready to bring him in for an interview. But there's just one setback.
He disappeared. At this point, it's become pretty apparent that Raphael's got something to hide. When you put it all together, there was probable cause to arrest him.
With a warrant for Raphael's arrest, police initiate a manhunt.
He had a girlfriend named Sandy Montez. We found him hiding at his girlfriend's house. He had dyed his hair orange, and it was obvious that he had done it to try to change his identity.
On September 28, 2000, Raphael is officially charged with first-degree kidnapping and aggravated murder.
I was like in shock. I had so much anger at Raphael. It's an anger I can't explain.
Just when police believe they have their man, the investigation takes another shocking turn.
We had Raphael in custody when his girlfriend showed up with evidence stating that there's no way he could have been at the murder scene. This raised some obvious concerns.
Could it be possible that Raphael was not involved in Gonzalo's murder?
It came as an absolute surprise.
Rafael Mora in the death of his sister's fiancé, Gonzalo Pizano Guzman. But now, Raphael's girlfriend, Cindy, claims she has an alibi for him on the night of the murder.
Cindy produced a receipt from a auto detailing place that purported to have dropped off Raphael's vehicle the night of the murder, and that Raphael was there and signed for it. It was presented as a solid piece of evidence that Raphael was working at the athletic club the night in question, and they had the receipt to prove it. And an individual named Cassandra, who owned the company, had signed off and was going to be an alibi witness.
Checking the validity of the receipt, police interview Cassandra, who admits to being a friend of Raphael.
With a little bit of prodding by the investigators, she finally admitted that, in fact, the receipt was fake.
She confessed it was all a lie, orchestrated by Raphael.
It was something that she dummied up because Raphael had asked her to.
With Raphael's alibi discredited, investigators turn up the heat on co-conspirator Joe Noble.
He told the officers that he hadn't been completely honest.
He admitted that he was at the parking lot at the golf course. He was there when the car was burned. He admits the kidnap. He admits to pistol whipping the victim.
He said that it was Raphael ordering him to do that. They then picked up Gonzalo, put him in the back of a Ford white pickup truck.
And then Raphael drove Joe home with the victim knocked out in the back of the truck.
But when he last saw Gonzalo, albeit knocked out, was still alive.
And then supposedly Raphael would have then driven back out to Hag Lake and killed Gonzalo.
Detectives have a hard time believing Joe was not there when Gonzalo was finally killed, but have no proof.
We had no physical evidence that we could link them to the crime, and it was frustrating.
Desperate, investigators obtain security footage from businesses along the route they believe Raphael and Joe would have taken to and from the murder. Something on one of the tapes grabs their attention.
We saw Raphael's pickup pull into the gas station to get gas.
And lo and behold, there's Joseph Noble getting out of the white Ford and going into the gas station.
And the timing of the gas station surveillance footage indicated that would have been probably shortly after the murder.
Police also obtain a warrant for Raphael's phone records.
Raphael insisted all along that he couldn't have committed the murder because he was miles away cleaning the gym. And lo and behold, at the time of the murder, his phone was not bouncing off the nearest tower to the athletic club. It was bouncing off the nearest tower to Hag Lake, which puts him in the area of the murder. That was huge.
I felt ecstatic because I knew in that moment that we had him, and it absolutely conclusively meant that his alibi at the athletic club was false.
This was a big moment of actually having some physical evidence.
There's a great deal of satisfaction, too, having found the truth.
With the new evidence in hand, prosecutors are confident they can secure a conviction. And in 2003, Joe Noble and Rafael Mora are tried together.
Both were charged with aggravated murder and with kidnapping in the first degree.
At trial, prosecutors present a picture of what they believe happened to Gonzalo the night he was murdered.
Rafael did not want him marrying his sister.
Rafael was determined to have Gonzalo killed.
And so he hatched a plan to get Gonzalo out to the golf course.
Lured Gonzalo out there with Eddie and Jaime.
After getting out of the car, Gonzalo was beat and pistol whipped and thrown into the back seat of the pickup. Rafael or Joe then set the car on fire and they proceeded to Hag Lake.
They drove to an isolated spot. Gonzalo got out of the car. The gun was pointed at him.
We believe that he was shot multiple times by Joe and that Rafael was the one that wanted to get the final word in and stabbed him multiple times in the heart.
On the stand, a witness reveals Rafael bragged to him about the murder.
That Gonzalo was begging for his life, that Gonzalo was promising that he would stop the relationship with Saul, that he would move to Mexico.
Mató a mi hijo de esa manera tan cruel. Gonzalo no se merecía esa muerte tan fuerte, nada más para que no se casara con Marisol.
No one deserves to be killed that way. No one. It was so senseless. It was so senseless.
On April 28, 2003, the jury finds Rafael and Joe guilty of Gonzalo's murder.
Joe was sentenced to life with a possibility of parole after 25 years. Rafael was sentenced to straight life, no possibility of parole.
After 5 years in prison, Rafael appeals his conviction, arguing ineffective counsel.
The judge decided that this case should go back to trial, which was a shock to all of us.
Ultimately, a decision was made to allow Rafael to plead to manslaughter in the first degree.
Rafael's sentence is reduced to 25 years and 10 months. With time served, he will be eligible for early release in 2024.
He had no remorse, he had no guilt. He's a monster. What he did to us changed our life forever. He destroyed us.
Even after everything they've endured, Gonzalo's family remains inspired by his memory.
Yo lloré por muchos años, mucho tiempo, y un día yo lo soñé. Yo estoy bien, ma. No llores por mí. Yo estoy muy bien. Y yo lo miré riéndose y me dijo que ya no llorara por él, que él estaba bien, que él estaba bien.
Police have launched a murder investigation this afternoon after the body of a popular local DJ was discovered in a secluded country lane.
It was obviously a really ferocious attack.
11 slash wounds and 10 stab wounds to different parts of his body.
A grieving community hunt for those responsible when a vulnerable adult is viciously killed.
You know, most people sort of couldn't believe it.
I never thought that anything like that would happen around these parts.
My suspicions were that there was something more to this, something related to drugs or some other kind of criminal fallout.
He couldn't see the bad in people. That's the problem with Michael. He thinks everybody's like him.
Perched on top of the white cliffs of Dover lies the picturesque village of Capel-le-Fern.
Capel is a really idyllic, friendly neighbourhood. It's the kind of place where you can leave your door open. It's a really safe place to live. The most exciting thing that happens here is the chickens escaping.
It's just a lovely village. Just countryside, you know, go out with the dogs and people say hello.
There's a pub, community centre, a caravan park. It's popular with dog walkers and holiday makers walking across the White Cliffs.
Everyone knows each other, more elderly people than young. There's not really any crime.
10 minutes along the coast lies Aycliffe, a small hamlet next to the port of Dover. where the Kerr family, along with 30-year-old aspiring DJ Michael, call home.
Michael was butter wouldn't melt in his mouth sort of person. He would be very jovial, very jokey. I always knew him growing up. We all played together. Always a funny little guy. If he'd done anything wrong, if he misbehaved, he just gave you his smile and that was it.
Michael always managed to make his family laugh, not least his mother Patricia.
He was mischievous, funny, just a normal child. He would be naughty and you'd try and tell him off, but he'd have this cheeky grin.
But Michael almost never made it into the world.
When Michael was born, his birth was very quick. And then a few hours later, the doctor came round and he said, your baby's a very poorly boy. There's only a 30% chance that he will survive the night.
Whilst Michael did make it through the night, doctors diagnosed him with Fragile X syndrome.
Michael was diagnosed when he was 6 with Fragile X syndrome. When he was 9, the doctors at Guy's Hospital dismissed Fragile X chromosome syndrome. So we've never known what was wrong with him. I'm convinced that it was cerebral palsy. I'm convinced of it.
His brain would function just as normal, but his body was just that much slower. But to us, he was Michael. He didn't have a condition. He was just Michael.
It never held him back. The doctors told me he would never walk. And just after his 3rd birthday, he ran across the room. Then they said he'd never ride a bike. So I go out and buy him a bike. And I can't remember how old he was when he started riding his bike, but there was no looking back once he got on that bike.
As Michael grew older, he developed a passion for music and parties and became a DJ in local pubs and clubs.
As we were growing up, sort of going to parties and discos and things like that, Michael would always sort of he would like to be the music man. He was the DJ.
As long as Michael loved it, he would play it. Anything and everything his mixes would be. And it would be like maybe Celine Dion going into Erasure, going into something else. And that's just how he was. But he loved it, and you could see he loved it. And that's what was lovely about Michael.
Whilst Michael loved being on the decks, his true passion was being behind the wheel.
As he started to get a bit older, he went towards his car. He'd done his driving lessons. Took him quite a while, bless him, but he passed, he'd done it, he passed.
And the day he passed, you think he'd won the lottery. Absolutely would think he'd won the lottery. He was so made up that he'd passed.
The car that Michael had was like a goldy coloured Renault Clio, and it was his pride and joy. He loved it. I think he probably loved that car more than he did himself.
Michael was always keen to show off his pride and joy and was known for giving locals a lift home from Dover when the pubs closed.
When Michael passed his test, he just didn't drink, so he was always about, if he'd be outside, if a club finished, he'd be outside of his car. And it just led on from there. Anyone want to lift home? He always wanted to make sure that, especially girls, if there's any girls, that they got home okay, because getting a taxi late at night in Dover could become impossible. He never done it for any financial gains, he never done it for anything. It would put petrol in the car and it meant he could be driving still. So he loved and lived for driving.
And I think that's where Michael's popularity came from, I think. Meeting people, new friends, he would offer them lifts home, just literally out of kindness of his heart. He would always make sure that people were safe because of his niceness and how he was with people, really.
But in the spring of 2013, everything changed.
Kent police have launched a murder probe after a body was discovered in the village of Capel-le-Fern. Police say the body of a 30-year-old man was discovered on a secluded country lane at around 1 p.m. this afternoon.
So when the police officers turned up, they saw immediately at the end of the lane, they could see Michael lying motionless a few metres away from his car. So this is the location where Michael Kerr was found. When I arrived here, Michael was lying here, face up, and then just over here was a significant pooling of blood. It was clear that it was a homicide investigation. He had significant injuries to his neck, and which he couldn't have done himself. His neck was open, and it also looked as if he'd been potentially moved or dragged. There was blood splatter within the car as well. And we discovered 2 of his teeth under his body. It was obviously a really ferocious attack.
But what had led to this popular DJ being murdered in such a brutal way? Had he picked up the wrong person? Could this have been a robbery that had gone tragically wrong? Or did Michael unwittingly stumble upon people up to no good?
My suspicions were that there was something more to this.
Locals in the coastal village of Capel-le-Fern are waking up to news of a brutal murder.
The body of 30-year-old DJ Michael Kerr was found on Satmar Lane earlier this afternoon. Kent police are appealing for any information into the attack.
I did wake up with this sick feeling in my stomach on the 10th. I've got this nervous feeling that something's going to happen. And then there was a knock at my door. And I remember seeing this woman standing there, and she asked if I was Michael's mum. And I said, yeah, what's he done? And then she just said, I'm sorry.
We was actually, as a family, we're down at the little holiday village about half hour away. And Michael was supposed to come down and join us that day. My phone lit up with hundreds of missed phone calls and messages from my friend, who then informed me that Michael had died. She then went on to tell me that he'd been attacked and believed that he'd been stabbed.
Obviously, at first, I didn't want to believe it was Michael. I kept saying to myself, no, it can't be Michael. It can't be. It's not going to be Michael. Why would anybody do this to Michael? He's He's everybody's friend. Everybody loves Michael. It can't be him. Can't be him. And then as the evening went on, it came out that it was Michael, and yeah, that's how I found out.
News of this horrific attack soon spreads across the quiet coastal village.
I woke up and there were police everywhere. I felt sick, I felt disgusted, and I couldn't understand why someone would do what they did.
You know, most people sort of couldn't believe it. A lot of the older people were a little bit unsettled. You know, anyone that lived near something like that would be.
It was a shock to the system. You know, I mean, you don't expect anything like that here. It's such a quiet place.
Kent police work immediately to preserve the crime scene.
We cordoned off the scene. We had the car that needed to be examined. And then, because of the seriousness of the case, we actually organised for a pathologist to come to the scene and do an assessment of the scene and take samples of the scene. That's really unusual. That very rarely happens, only on the most serious of cases. But actually, he couldn't arrive until the next day. And the weather was awful that night. We had wind and we had rain, and this is on top of the cliffs, so it's really open. We had a tent that was set up, and the officer did a fantastic job protecting him before taking Michael to the mortuary.
We went to see him, and he was covered up with this purple tape. And I remember saying to him, "You've got Mummy's favourite colour wrapped round you." And I remember laying over him, and I felt him move. And in that second, I just thought, it's not real. It's going to be fine. It's going to wake up.
The crime scene is contained, and the search for anything which points to Michael's murderer begins.
What was obvious from the initial search is that his mobile phone was missing and not found. His wallet was intact though, so there was no obvious sort of sign that it might be a robbery.
With the robbery ruled out, detectives speculate whether Michael's phone holds vital information about his attacker.
My suspicions were that there was something more to this. I was really suspicious. I didn't know whether it was a fallout over drugs and drug dealing. So when we first turned up, the car was actually wedged up against the bank, as if it had been driven up the bank, which went with something obviously bad going on, whether it's somebody trying to get away or something.
The evidence points towards the driver trying to take Michael's car to make a hasty escape. The question is, what was Michael doing in such a secluded location?
There was no relatives or no friends of Michael's to be lived anywhere near that area. There was no family he would have been seeing. No reason that Michael would have been there. It was just there because he was lured there.
With little reason for Michael to be at Satmar Lane, suspicions grow within the local community.
So Dover is obviously a major travel hub. It has the port, it's a major thoroughfare across the channel. And Aycliffe is to the west of the town and is very close to a lorry park. A lot of transient people coming and going, lorry drivers, travellers, tourists. So the idea that Michael Kerr could have been killed by someone just passing through was quite suggestible.
Detectives need to keep an open mind. They reach out to the people that knew Michael well to help build a profile of his movements that could lead to the attacker.
Michael Kerr is a 30-year-old guy. He's got a learning disability. He was actually well known locally. Quite often he'd be seen driving around with friends, giving people lifts home from nightclubs. He was, a genuinely overtly helpful guy, trusting, potentially too trusting.
Yeah, I think he did want to be everybody's mate. And a lot of people took advantage of that. Some people not in necessarily a good way. And if it meant making friends, then he was vulnerable. And he'd give people his money and give them lifts everywhere.
Which is what he always done nearly every day since he had the car, to help people out. And he wouldn't not help people out.
He couldn't see the bad in people. That's the problem with Michael. He can't see the bad in people. He thinks everybody's like him.
With the murder happening at night in such a rural area, the investigation turns to the local community. Could there be witnesses to Michael's death?
We went door to door to see whether anyone had heard anything that happened at that time of night, because it's so rural, then maybe they would have heard. And actually there was somebody at a premises about 100 metres away who did say to us that they heard some sort of shouts and screaming, but it sounded more sort of laughing and screaming and people messing around more than anything else, and that was it.
With the latest information from family and locals, detectives begin to wonder. Had Michael naively offered a lift to his killer? Was it a friend or a stranger? As the post-mortem begins, it's apparent whoever it was carried out an horrific attack.
Mr. Kerr's injuries are almost all sharp force injuries. So we're talking about a bladed article. The most obvious injuries that Mr. Kerr sustained were 21 sharp force injuries. 11 slash wounds where the knife had been drawn across the skin, and 10 stab wounds to different parts of his body where the knife had been stabbed in. He also had a couple of teeth knocked out. There was a distinct lack of defensive injuries on Mr. Kerr. That would suggest that he was overcome very suddenly, overpowered very quickly, and potentially started to lose blood and lose consciousness so quickly that he simply didn't have the opportunity to respond.
From the evidence from the pathologist, it's clear that this was a very, very sustained attack. So it wasn't a matter of seconds. This would have taken minutes to carry out.
The immediate thing that springs to mind with that number of injuries is it is more than you need to kill somebody. So this is into what some of the psychologists would call overkill. This is not just ending someone's life. This is far in excess of what's necessary to do that.
With the cause of death established, the race is on to find the murder weapon before vital evidence that would point towards the killer could be lost.
From the scene here, it's a narrow single-track lane that runs for about a mile or so up to the A20. So we had dozens of officers searching, 20 or 30 metres either side, all the way along, which took a number of days. So there's also a pond which we had officers forensically searching throughout.
The police and divers and that, they was all over here, going under the water, dredging it. I mean, they was in there days, just trying to find anything.
Having combed the hedgerows and surrounding fields, police finally uncover a potential lead.
Michael's mobile phone was missing, but we found on the search of the lane, his phone was smashed. It looked like it had been thrown on the floor and stamped on, and then kicked into the hedge.
With the phone sent for data analysis, their next priority is to find the murder weapon.
We didn't find anything in the ponds, but it's when we got onto the main road, I made the decision to search all of the storm drains. On the main road, there are 200 drains, and we got help from the local authority to suck out the stuff from the drains, and we found 2 knives.
With multiple knives discovered, police have to consider the possibility there could be more than one killer. Had Michael been subjected to a group attack? And if so, what was the motive? But as police start to consider that theory, there's a breakthrough.
Detectives investigating the murder of local DJ Michael Kerr have made a number of arrests in Dover today. 5 people were taken into custody and detained for questioning in what has become a major investigation.
A police officer actually had a telephone call from somebody to say something like, you need to come and speak to them. And then police turned up at the address.
5 people are arrested at the house in Dover. All suspects are believed to be locals in their 20s.
All the suspects were known to each other. They were living together in the same house. They were all arrested on suspicion of the murder of Michael Kerr. It would have been a shock to the local community. A lot of questions. Who are they? And are they a danger to other people in the communities?
In the small village of Capel-le-Fern on the Kent coast, police are investigating the murder of Michael Kerr and have arrested a group of people all living in the same house.
It would have been a shock to the local community. A lot of questions to be answered. Who are they? How could they have done this? What was the reason behind it? And are they a danger to other people in the communities?
While the police question the group of suspects, Michael's community rallied together to celebrate his life and memory.
The whole community, I think, was just in shock as to why anybody would want to hurt Michael. The way the community got together, it's just for the remembrance of Michael, really, a few days after was astonishing. It was something you'd see off of a movie or something, you know. It's like literally the whole of Dover came together for Michael, basically, literally just for Michael.
All of a sudden, there's just what felt like thousands of Chinese lanterns went up from the seafront. It was an amazing sight. You know, and I remember standing there. God, all that for my boy. Who knew?
Despite the beautiful send-off for Michael, The interrogation of the 5 suspects in connection with his death continues.
The guys were well known to the police for varying different things. I was really suspicious that there was something going on.
All 5 suspects are questioned by the police. Then there's shocking news. 3 of the 5 suspects are released, but the 2 that remain in custody are women. One of them is 22-year-old Alicia Davis.
We're presented with these 2 young ladies who've got no criminal records previously. Alicia Davis was an air cadet. Comes from I'll argue a reasonable background.
Also in custody is 21-year-old Charlotte Coulson. The pair met each other through the local nightlife scene in Dover and have been living together for nearly 6 months.
Charlotte Coulson was very good friends with Alicia Davis, and the pair of them were both very heavy drinkers and were well known in the area.
These girls are living a bit of a party lifestyle. They're constantly looking for drink, constantly looking for opportunity to have fun.
But what detectives need to know is how the women knew Michael, and were they involved in his death?
Charlotte Coulson said that she met Michael a year or so before in the clubbing scene within Dover. He'd be around. He was known as a gentle guy that was probably trying to sort of, find a girlfriend, trying to befriend people. She'd had lifts from him before. She'd had lifts back from nightclubs, but also occasionally to take her to the supermarket, that sort of thing. And it was actually only over recent weeks that Alicia got introduced to him.
I've seen Michael a couple of times with them in the car, and occasion a week before I've seen Michael with one of them in the car get out of his car and go into the shop and buy some alcohol.
As the police interview both women under caution, there's a revelation when they both admit to meeting Michael twice on the day he died.
They gave pretty consistent accounts in interviews. They've then described what has then happened.
They both describe that at 8 o'clock in the evening, Michael picks up Alicia Davis and takes her to Satmar Lane in Capel-le-Fern. Here they park up for some time before Michael then drives her back to Dover, buying her alcohol before dropping her home. The women spend the evening drinking, but just after midnight, Michael returns to their house.
Michael Kerr picked them up and they went for a drive to Satmar Lane.
Michael parks in the same spot he and Alicia Davis were at earlier in the evening.
Charlotte was in the back, Michael and Alicia were in the front.
What Alicia Davis says next turns the investigation on its head.
What Alicia Davis was saying is that she was attacked and raped by Michael. And she then defended herself. She put her hands down the side of the seat and found a knife and went to the only area of flesh that she could see, which is the throat, where she stabbed him.
With Davis claiming she attacked to defend herself, Charlotte's account is crucial.
She said she was asleep in the back of the car and she woke up to a commotion where Alicia was actually attacking him.
According to Coulson, she'd been asleep in the back and couldn't do anything about it, couldn't stop it after it had begun, and was trapped in the back seat and couldn't get out of the car either.
Charlotte Coulson then gave a very confused description about how they both got out of the car, and they then moved Michael's body, tried to drive off. So that explains the position of the car. When we found it, she said they stalled it and couldn't get it working, which is why they then decided to walk back to Dover.
With Davis claiming she stabbed Michael in self-defence, and Coulson adamant she was not involved, simply a bystander at the scene, the police need to examine the evidence to establish if their defences could in fact be the truth.
There was quite a lot of work for us to do, and certainly not make any presumptions, because for two young ladies not known to police before, no evidence of violence, to go from nothing to not just harming, killing somebody, but ferocious attack, that just did not make sense.
In their search for the truth, police obtained CCTV evidence from the local area.
I let them know that I had CCTV and people were on CCTV.
It was actually a premises close by that we got CCTV from that showed the vehicle going past, which enabled us to time when they turned up at the scene. We also were able to get some information from telephone analysis of movements of phones, so it all tied up to the early hours of the 10th of April.
By comparing CCTV and telephone mass data, detectives are able to confirm Michael's car arrived in Capel-le-Fern shortly after 2 a.m. But when they examine both suspects' phones, they uncover some crucial information that throws the girls' version of events into serious question.
We used some techniques to recover some deleted messages, some messages that we know that were definitely deleted, that timed at exactly the time that the CCTV showed that the car arrived. And there's an exchange between Coulson and Davis by text message, whilst clearly Michael is driving to the end, basically saying, "Go now. Now do it now." And Davis responding to Coulson to say, "No, I can't. You're going to have to start." And then a message back saying, "Right, let's do it. Let's go." And then a text message saying, "Let's party." And this is within 3 minutes of passing the CCTV and being in that area. So that in itself is then indicating that they planned it. And both girls are involved in it, which goes against Coulson, who's then trying to say, "Well, I was asleep in the back. You know, my mate did it."
Police believe the text messages prove Michael's death wasn't in self-defense, but a well-planned attack. And the two knives discovered on the route the girls would have walked home raises even more doubt.
Their defence was that he had raped Alicia Davis and that she happened to discover a knife. Taking that with the knives that we recovered from the drain, when we compared the knives to knives in the premises in Dover, there were two knife sets, and these knives were the ones that were missing from the knife sets. So the girls took the knives with them. This isn't I found the knife and I'm protecting myself because he's raping me. They've planned to murder him.
A further search of the women's house uncovers more evidence.
We later discover that there's a fire in the back garden. And we find what looks like clothing that's been set alight. The others in the premises say that when they came home, they started putting clothes in the washing machine, but it was the burnt clothing that we were then able to match to them wearing before the event. The act of burning the clothes, was sufficient for us to get a charge.
With all the evidence pointing away from the claim of self-defense, Alicia Davis and Charlotte Coulson are charged with Michael Kerr's murder.
I think a lot of people were shocked. Two young females. Anyone in their right mind would be, sort of amazed that they could do something.
A 21-year-old and a 22-year-old with no previous convictions or knowledge to police. Why did they kill Michael?
22-year-old Alicia Davis and 21-year-old Charlotte Coulson have been charged with the murder of aspiring DJ Michael Kerr. But the question on everyone's lips is, why would two girls with no criminal backgrounds kill a man in such a brutal way?
Today, the trial of two young women is set to begin in central London for the murder of a 30-year-old man in the village of Capel-le-Fern, Dover.
With both girls pleading not guilty, the horrific details of Michael's death are to be laid bare in court.
The trial was actually moved out of Kent. There was a decision made because of the local interest and the seriousness of the case that it was allocated to the Old Bailey.
In December 2013, the trial into Michael's murder begins in central London, and his family come face to face with his alleged killers.
They both were brought in, sat in their separate spaces in the court, heads down, didn't look up, didn't acknowledge anybody, just kept their heads down.
They would be sat there laughing and joking, but as soon as the judge and jury came in, they would sit there with their heads down and behave themselves. And I didn't know I was capable of hating somebody as much as I hate Hood. They showed no remorse, nothing, absolutely nothing.
As the trial begins, both Davis and Coulson plead that they acted in self-defence.
The accusations they made against Michael just showed how evil they were. They planned this, they done it, they took his life and they tried to get away with it by making up the most horrendous, hideous lie about Michael.
I know that he wouldn't have done anything wrong to them. There was allegations made against Michael which were complete and utter, shot down, utter nonsense. So no, I don't know or can think of any reason why they would have wanted to do it. Just out of pure evil, I suppose.
No matter how much they prepared us for it, when you hear what they're saying in their interviews in that courtroom, and you hear the accusations about my son, nothing prepares you for that.
Key to the prosecution's case is establishing that Alicia Davis's version of events were not true.
It was alleged that Michael Kerr had tried to rape Alicia in the car. So Alicia had acted in self-defence by stabbing him multiple times.
To disprove Alicia's defence, we actually took the gold Clio to the Old Bailey, parked it in the rear yard, and the judge and the jury all came out to inspect it. We thought that was really important because when she describes what happened with him effectively undressing and then undressing her in the act of rape, you only have to look at the car and the size of the car on the inside to say that couldn't possibly happen. You know, even 3 people in it would have been quite tight.
New evidence revealed in court further questions their defence.
Another thing that we discovered later is that there were actually text messages on Charlotte Coulson's phone to Michael after he was dead to say, why haven't you come to pick us up? Why we haven't heard from you? Clearly trying to misdirect the police investigation to say, well, we never saw him.
She tried to establish a false alibi, which is quite a cynical move after the murder, to try and make it seem as if she thought that he was still alive.
As the trial progresses, further information as to why the defendants met with Michael that day comes to light.
Alicia Davis actually admitted earlier that she had had sex with Michael for money. Charlotte Coulson said she's the one that actually had organised for Alicia to have sex with him for money. They needed £20 to pay for alcohol.
Charlotte Coulson virtually pimped out her friend, Alicia, to go and have sex with Michael. It doesn't seem like an awful lot of money. It's essentially beer money for them. But it seems that Alicia agreed to that.
Finally, the court is presented with a possible motive for the brutal killing.
On the face of it, the girls are worried that they've prostituted Alicia to get money for alcohol, and that Michael, you know, as a vulnerable adult, now thinks that he's got a girlfriend in a relationship. So is the only motivation then to stop that happening? Instead of saying, no, that's not what it is, Michael, to actually lure him in and kill him.
They egged each other on. They drank very, very heavily. And from there, they decide to perhaps teach him a lesson, to punish him.
Still, Coulson maintains she wasn't involved in the vicious attack, and that Alicia Davis acted alone. But having discovered 2 knives, the court hears damning evidence which suggests a different story.
With stab wounds, like with any other sort of wound, you're looking at where they are, how deep they are, what angle they're going in at. The injuries were widely distributed on Mr. Kerr's body, so they're not all focused in one place. If they're all over his body, if the injuries are slightly different in different places, it's suggesting more than one assailant.
The judge's view later was that Charlotte Coulson was just as involved, and actually probably, because of the position of the wounds on the neck, that they were from behind. That Charlotte pulled his hair, pulled his chin back, and slashed his throat a number of times. And the injuries are horrific. The stab to the chest by Alicia that she's admitted, there's evidence that she took the knife partially out of his chest and moved the position of it to make sure that she hit his heart. I mean, that comes across with such callousness. The extreme of violence from where you wouldn't expect it is just incredible.
After murdering Michael in cold blood, the court hears how Davis and Coulson went on to enjoy the rest of their night.
Police found CCTV evidence from after the murder, which showed they'd gone to McDonald's and bought booze, which perhaps suggested that they'd taken money from Michael after they'd killed him as well. And we know also people witnessed hearing the girls laughing and joking as they returned back to their home. So it just shows the callousness that they regarded what they'd done.
I mean, I've dealt with many, many murders over the years, and this is up there. You know, for girls with nothing in their background that indicates that they would go down a path of criminality, it just does not make sense.
They were both very heavy drinkers. They had a bit of a toxic friendship. And I think it would be too simple an explanation to say they did it for a couple of pounds for the price of a McDonald's. But together, they proved to be an absolutely deadly combination.
After a grueling 3-week trial, the jury returns its verdict. Both Alicia Davis and Charlotte Coulson are found guilty of murder. Davis is sentenced to life, with a minimum of 25 years. Coulson is sentenced to life, and a minimum of 20 years.
It is closure in a way. It's closure that Michael's got his justice, but it still will never be enough in my eyes. It will never be enough.
They both should have got longer. I don't know much about prison, only what I've seen on television. But I really hope they're not having an easy time. I hope they're not having an easy time.
I don't think people can change. If there's evil in those people like that, there wasn't just one attack, there was 2 people doing a vicious attack on him. So they should pay for it with their lives.
So many people have said, a life for a life. I don't want that. No, I don't want them to die. Because in my head, every night when those lights are out, they see and they hear and they are haunted by what they've done to my boy. And it torments them.
8 years after Michael's passing, his friends and family are slowly coming to terms with life without him.
The fact is now we can smile and laugh and remember Mike for who he was and what he meant to us, rather than the way that he was taken. Just the biggest smile, absolutely loving life. Love him to bits and miss him completely.
I think what happened to Michael shook the whole community. And I don't think Michael realised how loved he was.
Life stops for you. The world still revolves for everybody else. But it doesn't revolve for you. But I was told once that I've got to let him go. I've got to let go of the anger, I've got to let go of the pain, I've got to let him go. I can't, I don't want the pain to go because I'm scared that if the pain goes, he goes. And all while I've got the pain, I've got him. I don't know if that's normal, but that's how I feel.